We are recording now. So,
So,
TeddyMax, how you
hello.
doing, man?
I am good. A little bit windy, but I've been indoors all day, so nothing to complain about since I
Yeah,
haven't been in it.
weather was beautiful today. I don't know if you
Really.
got a chance to
Oh,
be outside much, but
I mean, this morning I went out to get some coffee, but other than that, no. It was actually weird. When I went out to get coffee, the sun was out, but then after I left the coffee shop, it was cloudy. So, yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. I had practice this morning, so I couldn't do a Bible
Oh,
study with you guys. But
yeah. All
yeah,
good.
this is actually the second one I've done today.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
with we did one with Zach Smith, freshman on the
Awesome.
team, this
Awesome.
afternoon. So
Hmm.
uh, I don't think I'm going to be able to get both of these released on
Yeah.
the same day. But I'll do my best to get these out as quickly as possible. But
Cool, man. Hmm.
yeah, well, I know you've got a great story
Mm-hmm.
to tell.
Yeah.
And first of all, let me just say I've really appreciated having you as
Yeah.
an RA
Thank you.
these last couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I really enjoyed was the one-on-ones that we did.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that you get to
Mm-hmm.
want to get to know
Yeah.
us on an individual level
Mm-hmm.
really well. And now I want to take that same opportunity and
Yeah.
get to know you a little bit better
For sure.
in return.
Hmm.
So just kind of start from the beginning. Tell me, about growing up and
Yeah.
tell me your journey, how you got here.
Definitely. So I think the first thing that I'll note is I am Pacific Islander, which is a demographic that's basically non-existent on this campus, which is cool in one way, but can also be tiring in another. But I have a pretty positive outlook on life, so it's been a blast being able to share a bit of my culture with people who have never experienced it before. So Pacific Islander specifically, I'm Tongan and Samoan. My mom is Tongan and my dad is Samoan, both South Pacific Islands. Grew up with a very heavy understanding of where I come from. Culturally, very proud of my roots and where my ancestors come from, and so just a very tight knit community. And yeah, love my family, love my culture, even with a lot of the different things. Every culture has its vices and whatnot, but nonetheless, my grandma was actually the first one in my family to come to the States and just built a life for herself. Spent some time in Texas. That's why a lot of my family is actually in Texas to this day. And I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. And so, um, yeah, huge fan of just Texas and what it is and what my family has been able to build there. And then I think her move to California wasn't really motivated by anything major that happened in her life. But yeah, nonetheless, she found herself in California, and my mom was actually born back in the islands, and so my grandma eventually brought her out here when she had settled down a bit, and so my mom grew up out here as well as my dad, and California was just a place to be for my family. And I was born in 2000 to Malia and Paul. And my mom and dad at the time, they had just grew up very in a very religious family, a lot of pastors on my grandma's side. But yeah, I think with those faith backgrounds, very strong faith backgrounds, that's sort of what my childhood was. I grew up in the church with my mom and dad. And it was just really cool seeing sort of their servant's heart and understanding what it is to be a Talanoa, and very proud of that. And I'm the oldest of three, so a lot is on me, at least within our culture, especially being a male in my culture, and just being that oldest and having to set that example as well, which I'm grateful that I had that example set for me too by my parents. Little rocky relationship with my parents, though. It was, yeah, I think it was 2008. The Great Recession had hit, and my dad was actually laid off of work, and so it was interesting, sort of seeing the shift in his character and how that affected him, and how everything that was going on in the world at that time was having a huge impact on just who he was, and the man of God that he was. And so just seeing that impacted me in a large way, and seeing my mom too, and just the family looking around me and seeing how we were all being impacted by this. And eventually dad was out of the picture, got with this rough crowd after getting laid off. He was a plumber, and so it was hard on him. I can't imagine. And so from being the breadwinner to sort of not knowing where the next paycheck was going to come, got into that bad crowd and to the whole drug scene and whatnot. But seeing him sort of leave and go through that whole process, and eventually being incarcerated, where he was sentenced to prison. It was just interesting seeing my mom's reaction to all of this, and so shout out to her, because I definitely wouldn't be who I am today and where I am today if it wasn't for her, and just sort of how she led our family. Again, her and then me and my two younger siblings through those 10 years, and so. Very much a redemption story. Went through a lot of changes while he was in there, and he was actually released on my 18th birthday, which that's a whole decade that you miss out on, and just rebuilding that relationship there, and seeing how God has definitely blessed my family and all that we've come from. And there's a lot of struggles and things that I've been through during those 10 years that he probably won't ever know about, but I'll know about, and I'll know in what ways that has really shaped who I am, and I am grateful for where I am, and I think that had a lot to do. I think the struggles that I went through and where I ended up being, with my mom deciding to move us out of sort of the hood, if you will, and getting into a safer, nicer neighborhood, and just I guess wanting to rebuild from that. And yeah, my mom did a lot of work. She owns her own business actually in Temecula, California, and it's beautiful. She's a colon hydrotherapist, loves just helping people, and she's definitely, healing is definitely one of her spiritual gifts, and so that woman is amazing, imperfect but amazing. And so it's been a blessing to see how my mom has sort of risen up and how I'm starting to rebuild that relationship with my dad. But I think when he was released, it really made me wonder where I was going in my future. I think with him gone, a lot of my mentality was, well, I need to get to college all on my own. I need to be able to get a scholarship that would provide basically a full ride scholarship, so that my single mom wouldn't have to pay a cent. I know that was sort of my driving motivation during that span of time. And so I started in middle school and working my way up through high school, definitely invested all of who I was into perfecting my craft and into the game of football itself, and just learning what it really meant to be a football player, a smart football player for sure too. As a center, I was on the offensive line and the defensive line, but I think my favorite part about football was definitely being the center, and just being able to, in our high school, we played an option offense. And so being able to make some calls based off of what I was seeing in front of me, based off of the defense and the plays that we were playing, again, that partnership that you make with the QB, and then again, all 11 guys on the field. It was a beautiful thing that I definitely learned a lot from. But a lot of things that I didn't like about the football culture. Even with an amazing head coach, you always have locker room culture and other things that you have to deal with. And so being in a role of responsibility over the guys as a captain, it dawned on me pretty early on that even though this was something that I loved and I cherished, I honestly didn't know if I saw myself playing it at the next level. And so, again, just a combination of things happened with my dad's release and with me wondering if this was something that I saw at the next level, but still wrestling with how I was going to get to college without having my mom pay for a lot of it. And then again, debt. I didn't want to go into a lot of debt. So I think it was the summer before going into my senior year. My chemistry teacher, he was a Westmont alumni. And so he had nominated me for this camp, this student leadership conference at Westmont that they put on called Trailhead. And it's really about like discerning your call and just helping you become a better, not only a better student leader, but just a better human being in general, which, I absolutely love learning how to be a better human being. And it was an awesome camp, and actually the counselors there, which I'll get to this later on in this time, but the counselors there, the student counselors, they were RAs. So that was my first exposure to res life and to sort of what that responsibility held. And it was an awesome experience. I absolutely loved it, and it changed the whole trajectory. I think God definitely used my chemistry teacher and also my AP Lit teacher in sending me to that camp, because it was there that I realized if these are the type of human beings that are coming from this type of institution, count me in. I definitely want to be a part of something like this. And so I had found myself, giving myself up to a worthy cause, and it shifted from football to being liberal arts. And so it was crazy. I went back to school for my senior year, and my head football coach is meeting with all the seniors saying, okay, we've been working on a game plan for you. These are the next steps now that you're in your final year with the program. And I went into that meeting very nervous. I said, okay, I know Coach Kuna and I have been working on my sort of football game plan into higher education, because that was my only way in, or so I thought. That was my ticket. And so I was nervous to tell him that I was having second thoughts, and that there were so many things that I was considering and really wrestling with and grappling with. And so, but I ended up going into the meeting scared out of my mind, because this man was very like, okay, we have a plan and we're going to stick to it. And which is another thing that I loved about him. But it was interesting because I went in and he noticed that there was something different about me. He was like, I feel like you're not being straight with me here, Teddy, which is totally not like you. You seem a little bit hesitant in our conversation, what's really going on. And sort of was straight with him and told him everything that was sort of going on in my mind, and even things that I was wrestling with within, the program, and some of the things that I was wrestling with in terms of my relationship with some of the coaches, and even my relationship to him. And while he was an amazing man, I didn't agree with everything that he would do. But nonetheless, came out of that meeting feeling very good, because I truly felt that he understood that I didn't think football was necessarily the route I was going to go. And so I think the first semester of my senior year was me going back and forth. Football, no, Christian liberal arts. And for me at the time, I never saw there being a compromise. I knew it was either or. At least that's what I felt was what I needed to do. It was either I was going to go to a big school, play on a football team, and do that, or go to a Christian liberal arts college. And so, high school was an interesting time, especially that particular year. I really felt like high school was me figuring out who I wanted to be and what I was going to do for the rest of my life as fast as possible, which was totally different, because then I got here first semester of my freshman year at Gordon, and God sort of shattered that glass roof. And so coming back for my spring semester of senior year, I decided that I was going to do the Christian liberal arts college path. And so the thing for me, though, is that even though I loved Westmont, I knew I wanted to go to the East Coast. I loved the history of the East Coast. I wanted to travel during my college years. And I just knew I wanted to get out, and I felt the call to move out of the state of California, even though it's a pretty cool state. And I honestly can't recall what that process was like, but I do remember getting a lot of emails from Gordon. I don't know how, definitely the Lord, but I saw something about La Vida, and I love nature, I love hiking, not necessarily to the extent that some of our La Vida events are at, but I definitely have an inclination towards those activities. And so it was just a super cool opportunity. I started looking into it, and come to find out there was someone from my high school that came to Gordon, and from my football team actually, and he had just graduated the year before. And so I started talking to his mom and started doing more research, and I prayed about it, and I think Gordon is the school for me. And Gordon actually ended up being the only school that I applied to. There's a lot of things that I would do differently about my college application process, but at the end of the day, I still think I would have ended up at Gordon. And praise God for that, because I know for a fact that this is where I'm meant to be right now. And so it's just a cool thing when you know that and you're secure in that. And so, applied to Gordon. I was pretty hesitant though in the application process. So I applied to Gordon closer to graduation than I probably should have. Got in and didn't even visit, but just, yeah, I knew that I was coming to Gordon. And it was a new experience for me, but it was very cool. And so I remember over the summer after I had graduated, my mom wanted to check out the school. And so I came with her. I came with my little sister too, who's actually a senior in high school right now. And so we just walked around the place, and yeah, God confirmed it. It was the place that I was going to be and I needed to be. And it was super cool finally getting here. And then, yeah, that's sort of my coming to Gordon story. And the funny part too is that in my coming to Gordon story, I was a incoming freshman that was a psychology major with a neuroscience minor on the pre-med track, and I was going to be a orthopedic neurosurgeon. And it's been pretty cool to see how right now where I am at, where the Lord is calling me, is definitely not orthopedic neurosurgery. To sort of see how, again, referencing back to what I mentioned earlier, he shattered the glass roof of my house in such a good way. And even though it didn't feel good at the time, I'm realizing how really good it was for me. Switching from that to becoming a double major in psychology and international affairs, my second semester's freshman year. So this last spring, and just learning a lot about political theory and just fell in love with that world again. And then a quarantine hits, and COVID is a reality that we're living through. This is a global pandemic, and in the midst of that, I actually finished out my spring semester really well. Praise God, because I know that wasn't the case for a lot of people. But it was a weird time because I found myself back in a place that I just least expected. That's not where I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be in Wyndham, Massachusetts, finishing out my freshman year, and then going off to an internship in Maine at a camp that I wanted to work with. And so it was just a really weird experience, very confusing, very interesting. Learned a lot out of quarantine about myself that were good things, and there were also bad things, and learned a lot about, family. Family is an interesting dynamic. We all have our own story with our own family. And so, just relearning a lot of things and being able to rebuild on a lot of things. Because again, I was forced to be with my family, and that meant my mom and my dad. And again, working on that relationship, and then with my sister and my brother, and just building on those. And just all together, my grandma and my uncles and aunts have a really big family. Again, Pacific Islander families are very big. And so, yeah, it was interesting, to say the least. And I was so blessed when I heard that Gordon was coming back in the fall. And so I came back at the beginning of this semester, super pumped, ready to go. I knew what I was committed to. I knew I was going to be in GCSA. I knew I was going to be an RA in Fulton. I knew I was going to help lead gospel choir on campus. I just couldn't have ever expected what it meant to do those things and lead in those capacities in the midst of a global pandemic, and then in the midst of all the racial tensions in our country after everything that happened, from the murder of George Floyd moving on. And so, the world is definitely experiencing something big, and I'm feeling like I'm very much experiencing something big in my own life too. And so, in the midst of all of this social injustice and just all of this the human depravity in your face 24/7, I feel like I'm recognizing just my own restlessness and my own just desire for something different, for change, for good change. And I think that's sort of where I find myself right now, in the middle of a season where I think God just might be shattering my glass roof again. And I didn't even put up new panels yet. It wasn't even a full roof. And yet again, I'm sort of in the middle of things where I don't know if psych and international affairs is necessarily the route I want to go. I don't know if I've been running away from a call that the Lord has placed on my life, or if I've been running towards it. And so that's sort of what I'm navigating on this journey right now, considering, political science, maybe making that shift, because IA is just a little too economics heavy, and I am not an economics guy at all. Not doing so well, and I'm only in microeconomics, and really struggling through that. Granted, it's in the midst of a pandemic and everything else that's going on, but still, just trying to reevaluate what exactly are my passions, what are my giftings, and again, what is that call that God has placed on my life. So, considering a few different options, Christian ministry, to political science. But I do know at the end of the day, I want to help people. And I know psychology is something that I'm always going to stick with. I just don't know what I want to couple it with. But just human behavior fascinates me, and understanding more about myself and understanding more about other people, and hopefully, getting to a place where I can help us understand each other and just be a part of that bridge that is formed between different individuals and different people groups. And I just love being there for people. And so, a lot of my hope for what I want to do in the future is hopefully trauma-informed work. I realized that in high school, the switch for me was in high school, I thought the Lord was calling me to perform surgery on the brain with a scalpel. Coming to Gordon, I realized I can perform surgery on a person's mind via conversation. And so that's a pretty cool thing for me, that I'm realizing, like, oh my gosh, like that's what I'm passionate about and that's what I'm gifted in. I just don't know how that's going to fit into this broader world that we're living in, and how exactly I can use that in a way to help advance the kingdom of God. And so, yeah, pretty cool season, pretty interesting season, a very restless season, but nonetheless, learning a lot.
Yeah, thank you. That's all very wonderful. Yeah, there's certainly a lot going on in our world right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first time, I don't know if we even formally met on this night, but I remember it was, I think, the second week of Scott radio shows, because when we were on air last year, Will Lott's The Fresh Take was the lead out for my show. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the second week you were his first guest on the Fresh Take podcast.
Will Lott.
Yeah, tell me how you connected with him and what you guys talked about that night.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting, actually. I came into Gordon and I was given one piece of advice by all of my high school teachers. It was, Teddy, when you get to college, be a nobody. Make sure no one knows your name, and make sure you don't put yourself out there too much, because you've done too much in high school. And you're seeing the effects of that in terms of just your lack of rest and whatnot. And I tried that for about the first hour of orientation. And then I realized, oh, wait. This is a pretty cool orientation crew. Definitely blessed, because I realized that not everyone's orientation experience is positive. But nonetheless, it was cool to have the OCU leaders that I had, Ivan and Lauren, and just how they tried to help us as freshmen navigate what it meant to be a freshman in college. And so met some pretty cool people in my OCU, connected with some pretty cool people just in orientation alone. And then I realized, okay, wait, Lord, I'm just going to follow your lead, and hopefully I don't become too busy. I'm not going to commit myself to too much, but I definitely don't want to close myself off to connection with people, because I just love your people, Lord. And so, yeah, I started getting connected with a bunch of different people, and just, I think what naturally happened is that I got connected to a lot of multicultural students on campus, and specifically the Clarendon cohort, a lot of great, amazing human beings, and just a lot of great human beings in general on this campus, but especially my class. Love the class of 2023. And I can't really tell you the first day that I met Will. I just know that I was hanging out with some Clarendons, and Will just happened to be one of those people, and then I think from there we just became friends. We're both very friendly people, and so it was just natural that we would just take that on, even though we didn't necessarily have to say like, oh, we're friends. But it was a pretty cool thing just to see how close I got with some different people in my class, and very blessed, and God has been faithful in His provision in terms of people that He's put in my life. And so I remember Will talking about him wanting to do a show for Scott Radio. And at the time, I was getting involved with GCSA, ended up running for freshman class rep. And so I knew, I was like, okay, student government, like I think that's where the Lord's calling me in this season. And so went into that. And when I heard him talk about Scott Radio, I said, oh, I'm on student government. We fund them. and and just hearing him and his passion and hearing his love for Scott Radio, it was just an awesome thing. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm so happy that, people that I care about are getting into things that they care about. And it's just an awesome thing. I love seeing people thrive. So seeing him thrive at Scott Radio was an amazing experience. And I was really excited for him. And then he asked me out of the blue, out of nowhere, he said, as freshman class rep, I'd love to get your perspective on things. I'd love for you to come onto the show. And so definitely blessed that I even knew him and that I knew Emanuela, who ended up being his co-host later on in the year. But yeah, I remember it was just me and Will, and I didn't know a lot what to expect. But I knew a lot of people had a lot of different opinions about Scott Radio. And so I was actually really excited that Will was doing the show because I knew what it was about. And I walked into that booth. It was an interesting time because I never knew what that booth looked like. And went in there and sat down and did my first radio show ever with Will Lott, who a lot of people know and I have really come to love and appreciate for sure.
Yeah, Will's a good guy.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege of having him come on my show last year and then getting to come on his show right after that. So yeah, you mentioned GCSA. I guess you were freshman rep last year. I know you're the vice president of student life this year. What inspired you to serve in GCSA and take on those roles?
Yeah, definitely. I came into Gordon with that piece of advice in my head. And I knew I wanted to find more balance in my life. And I knew I wanted to I wanted to pursue real rest, but in the midst of that, still serve and heed God's calling on my life. And so I was actually very prayerful. There was a night where I spent a lot of the night just talking it out with one of my roommates, James, and with different people that I had met during orientation because that election for freshman class rep was pretty early on in our freshman year. And so, yeah, I just felt a call that I knew I wanted to be a part of something. I just didn't know what that something was on campus. I didn't know what it was yet. But I knew I wanted to limit myself to two things. That was sort of my way of compromising with the advice that I got from my high school teachers in terms of being a nobody. So I said, okay, I'll be a part of two things. One that is a real responsibility that I'm taking on, and the other something that I'm doing more for fun and that I'm finding rest in. And so I had already found gospel choir because I love music. I love to sing. And so that was sort of my outlet and just my spiritual fill up. And something a family that I love to be a part of. And so the second thing that I found was student government. And I found that God's call for me to go into student government on this campus was very heavy, I realized. And in the beginning, I was, wrestling with things from back home, obviously, because, we don't just leave that at home, we bring it with us. And so I was like, okay, Lord, is this something that you want me to do? I got some advice, thought about it, and then I said, okay, well, I did one of those things, which I don't know how biblical this is, but I said, okay, Lord, well, if I lose, then it wasn't in your cards, so I'm going to run anyway. And but I ended up running, and it was a really tight race, actually, and I loved my who I was running against. She's an awesome human being, and I still am in contact with her today. But ended up getting the majority vote, and yeah, I was very nervous in the beginning, but I was so excited for the opportunity to serve my class, and I knew I wanted to serve them, and I wanted to serve them well. And so I think even something that I started when I was running for freshman class rep is one-on-ones. I love the value of one-on-ones and the power of one-on-ones. And I think you've experienced a one-on-one with me. And
what we're doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. I love group activities, but I definitely love getting to know a human being one-on-one and just, their story. I mean, quick little thing here to note is my last name is Talanoa, and that actually means a translation of that is like storyteller. And so I love to tell stories, and I also love listening to stories. I think we're all storytellers, and we all have a story to tell. And so I take that very seriously. And so, yeah, I think I loved getting to know some of what people were desiring and needing to see more of on this campus. So definitely early on in my GCSA career and just in my life here at Gordon, started setting up a lot of one-on-ones with people and wanting to build that relationship and not wanting to have just a one-off one-on-one, but a one-on-one that would open a door to continuing to be in conversation and live life with one another, even if it wasn't necessarily life every day, knowing every detail of someone's day-to-day life, but just, following that call into different relationships and friendships and getting to know people and getting connected, love getting connected. So I have met some very awesome people through that, whether for a season or whether for a lifetime. And so, again, yeah, it was pretty cool to meet new people and to be able to serve them, which, again, is just my main motivation behind why I do GCSA.
Yeah, I just want to mention very quickly, because you brought up your last name. How'd you give a name TeddyMax?
Yes. So when I was born, there was a lot of argument between my parents over what my name was going to be. And the reason why there was so much argument is because my dad wanted to name me after his brother Teddy, but my mom wanted to name me after her brother Max. And so they decided, after a lot of arguing, that they would just make a healthy compromise, as you do in a healthy relationship, and they combined the two names to make one. So TeddyMax, no space, no hyphen, TeddyMax. And then my middle name is Paul. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you obviously serve in GCSA, and that's great. It's not the only place on campus you serve. I know you alluded to this. You serve in Res Life as an RA here in Fulton. What inspired you to, I mean, obviously you mentioned it very briefly at the beginning, but why did you decide to take that on this year in addition to everything else that you're busy doing?
Yes, for sure. And before the pandemic started, I again was wrestling with how much can I healthily balance in my life on top of my academic load. And so, yeah, I was doing the whole student government thing. And I think as I was going through that, I didn't feel like I was being called back there to run again for a position in student government my sophomore year. So keeping that in mind, I knew, okay, well, there's an opening that I have. Lord, where are you calling me next? And I felt a deep call to Res Life. And again, a bit of that story beginning at Trailhead at Westmont, where I experienced RAs every day and sort of having them lead and guide the conference in such a beautiful way. I said, oh my goodness, Res Life is exactly where I want to be, especially if I'm a psych major and I love people and I want to serve people. And I love being a bridge builder and cultivating community. It's literally all of that is what Res Life is about. And so I went to the info night that they had and just fell in love with it all over again. Some of the speakers that I remember from that night are Arlie Kangas and Brianna Rivera, who was a Fulton RA. And again, I was in Fulton last year, and getting to see how the RA staff interacted with one another and with residents, and how they interacted with the RD and that relationship with Travis last year. Loved Travis. And so I really loved my Fulton experience, and I wanted to be a part of the group that makes the culture and makes the life of the building what it is. And so I knew I wanted to become an RA on the Fulton staff specifically. I was praying so hard for that, and ended up going through that whole application process, which was very thorough and very fun for me. A little nerve-wracking, but very fun. And so when I got the email saying that I was invited to be a RA in Fulton, I said, yes, Lord. And seeing the different people that were on my staff, I said, oh my goodness, this is awesome. I can't wait to be a part of this experience. And then I felt the call to do GCSA as well. So it was a very interesting thing. Shanaika Farias, our student body president this year, she's very persuasive woman. And so I've been able to serve as vice president of student life under her leadership. And it's just been a great administration to be a part of and to work alongside our student government leaders in a season that we're in with everything that we're going through. I think it's a very unique experience, and one that I'm grateful that God has called me to, but has been has honestly been exhausting and tiring. And so that's even something that I'm wrestling with for my future, what it looks like next year, is that I'm in Res Life, I'm in student government, GCSA, in the midst of a global pandemic and the pandemic of racism, and the implications on mental health in this season, and just so many issues that government has to deal with, and that you experience as RAs. But I am working through that. But so far I've loved being an RA. I've learned a lot about what being an RA even means. It's not about making sure that every single person on your floor gets to an event. It's about letting your residents know that there is a space for them whenever they choose, or if they ever choose to fill that space, and that it's totally okay if they can't, because scheduling as college students and in the semester that we're in, there's a lot going on. And so I've just been really blessed with all of the personal development that I've experienced in Res Life, and the professional development. And so it's been cool to get to know guys like Ben Schneider. I think it's been pretty cool. I mean, I'm always talking about some of my residents to anyone who will listen. I'll always joke around with my staff in staff meetings, like, yep, I have the coolest staff. You have, a guy with his own radio show. You have Shane Seacamp, who's, awesome. And I love Anthony Amico and Chris Harkins and all the guys on my floor. I think the coolest experience for me is having seniors on the floor that I've been able to learn a lot from, and just been able to live life with in their final chapter here at Gordon.
So you brought up both the viral pandemic that we're facing right now, and also the pandemic of racism. And I imagine, I can't speak for you obviously since I'm not in your shoes, but I can imagine that both of those have caused certainly additional challenges in both residence life and GCSA. So tell me how dealing with each of those has impacted the work that you've been doing this year and the training you had to do to get ready for this semester.
Yeah, for sure. I will say that because this is a very unique year, I'm not experiencing what the typical experience would be. So the Res Life experience as an RA has been totally different because of all of that, and because of both of those pandemics. And obviously in student government, government deals with all the issues, and these are two pretty big issues to be taking on as an administration. And so it's pretty cool to see that we have a pretty experienced administration at the cabinet level, at least for GCSA. And I think one major thing that I've even been reflecting on as I'm going through this and I'm fulfilling these roles in this season is that I am faced it feels like almost all the time with human depravity. I think I referenced this earlier, but just human depravity in my face all the time. And I think that's affected sort of how I even go about my day and how and my own worldview. It's been crazy to see how negative I've become because of just all of the issues that are always in my face, and recognizing that and addressing it, and saying, I need to be honest and realistic about what humans, the horrors that humans, because of our sinful nature, are capable of. But I also need to have a healthy balance in terms of recognizing that we are capable through the Holy Spirit of some really cool and good achievement in this world. And so I think just personally, I've had to remind myself, and I've definitely been reminded by people on this campus, that we are all good. We are not all good, and we are not all bad. No one race has a monopoly on virtue or vice. Not one people group has a monopoly on virtue or vice. We are all capable of virtue and vice. And so I've learned a lot about what it means to be human, which again I feel like is one of the purposes of a liberal arts education. But I won't get into all of that. but yes, it has been hard, and I feel very restless, not because I'm getting less rest, but because I feel like there is so much that needs to be done, that can be done, and I want to be a part of that solution. And so I think that's why I'm grateful to be a part of a team that works so well together in trying to bring about long-lasting and effective change institutionally.
So I remember one of the major issues this year, very early on, I know David Bellow, who's an AC in Sevilla, had chosen for his Hall theme Black Lives Matter.
Mm.
And there was an incident at the beginning of the year where one of the Hall decorations had been defaced. Someone had taken the B in BLM down and redone the tape to put an A in its place. So I know we're in Fulton, obviously not over in Sevilla, but I imagine that I don't imagine it did send shockwaves throughout the entire campus. What steps did either Res Life or GCSA take to amend the situation and try to make things right?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking that. I think, honestly, I couldn't believe it. And to be completely transparent, over the summer, I will be honest, I became desensitized to that type of thing, and that's not okay. And so I think what was interesting for me is that I knew something of that nature was going to occur when we came back to campus. I just didn't realize that it was going to be so soon. That happened in August. It felt like we literally had just gotten back to campus, and for that to happen was just I just couldn't believe it. And I think I saw it on Snapchat and Instagram, where I didn't really pay a lot of mind to it because I didn't recognize that it was something that had been done on our campus, that it was in Sevilla, that's where the incident occurred. But then when I realized that a lot of the multicultural students that I'm friends with, and that they were the ones that were posting this, I realized, oh my goodness, this is Gordon. This is Sevilla. This is the building next to us, and this is on a floor of a friend. David Bellow's an awesome guy, and for his hard work and all those decorations to be defaced is one issue, but then the actual issue of taking BLM, Black Lives Matter, a fact, not an opinion, and changing that into All Lives Matter, I didn't understand. I just couldn't understand why. And then that's when our Black leaders moved. And they moved graciously and they moved effectively, and it was something that was beautiful, and something that I am so grateful that I was able to be a part of. And so, that rally that was put on and really organized and led by Afro Hamwe, and particularly Orlane Destin and Shanika Farias just leading that charge, and with other Black student leaders that we have on this campus. It was just a beautiful thing to see strong, powerful Black women leading the charge against such injustice. Because the fact of the matter is, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. That is, right. They're not being treated as if they do matter.
Well, and my thing, I guess, I suppose all lives matter, is a factual statement. It can be well intentioned. But I guess my counter to that would be, if you truly believe all lives matter, and Black lives fall under the folder of all lives, then why would the phrase Black Lives Matter bother you? You think all lives matter. Somebody's saying Black Lives Matter. Black lives are part of all lives. And why should... It's not saying only Black lives matter, or Black lives, white lives don't matter, Asian lives don't...
Right.
I don't know, maybe if it's, the organization, the controversies that it has.
Right.
But, I don't think any of David's declarations made any reference to the organization. Just... Black Lives Matter. It's not overcomplicated, and
it's Thank you for that, and it's as simple as that. Black Lives Matter. Period. Whether it was it's become a very politically charged statement. But a life
And I don't think
mattering,
it should be that way.
yeah, a life mattering is not political. It should not be political. Um, you know, our lives matter. Human life has value. Human life is made bearing the image of Almighty God, and so um, I just don't understand. It wasn't in reference to the organization,
Right.
and even with the organization, I have my own opinions, but I think it is interesting to see that even the statement itself, even if there is nothing that's referencing an organization, that someone would be offended by that so much so that they would feel the need to deface it. Yeah, it just blows my mind. And so to see how, again, bringing it back to the response of our Black student leaders on campus, so proud of them and so grateful that I get to work with them. And honestly, I lament over all of the work that they have to put into even trying to get people to recognize that bare minimum they matter. And so,
Matter is the minimum.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so I think after that, it took a very huge emotional toll on me that I didn't realize, that I actually came back that night and I laid in the dark in my room and I was just in silence. And anyone who knows me knows that I've been on a journey of learning the value of silence, and I love silence and just sitting in silence. But there was just something different that night. I felt my heart was very heavy. I felt very exhausted. And I think everything hit me at once, and I realized, oh my gosh, like I've been desensitized too long. And I'm grateful that I have brothers and sisters on this campus, Black, white, brothers and sisters in Christ on this campus that have helped me to realize that this is a process, that this is an ongoing process, and something that we have to make the conscious decision of in terms of being a part of the solution. So it's not enough to be non-racist. You have to be anti-racist. Being a part of that work has been a blessing, and just understanding more about it and learning more about it, because I don't know all of it. Even communities of color have anti-Blackness. That's how deep this goes. So being a man of color that has, different perspective because of different experiences that I've had that are unique, to my own story, I had to really open myself up to hearing different things. And, our Black brothers and sisters are suffering. And so, we need to meet them in that.
Absolutely.
And help. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember my honors course freshman year. I forget the guy's name, but one of the assignments we had was to watch a few people on a panel discuss these topics of race. And and this is 3 years ago, keep in mind. So the All Lives Matter issue came up, and I guess the question was maybe, why would the phrase All Lives Matter bother people? And the guy answered with something that was the first time I thought of it this way. Really opened my eyes to this. He said, if you go to a breast cancer rally and you try to make a scene and say, what are you guys doing? All cancers matter. All cancer patients and survivors matter. Well, you're not wrong.
Right.
But the purpose of why that group is gathered there is to raise awareness for breast cancer. And so in the moment, it takes the spotlight away from what they're fighting for and what's important to them. And in a similar way, if you go to a Black Lives Matter march or bring up the issue of race and you say all lives matter, again, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it takes away from the issue at hand. And I thought that was a very good way of putting it. And, maybe more people need to look at it that way.
Yeah, love that. And I love and appreciate your perspective, Ben. Thank you so much, because, white allies are needed. Allies, productive allyship is what's needed in this season. And so people, who are,
Yeah. Well, and I have a lot of Japanese blood on my mother's side as well.
Yeah.
My grandfather's 100% Japanese, so I'm actually quarter myself. So
beautiful.
again, this isn't Japan specifically, but I know right when the pandemic was beginning, there was a lot of racism against people in China.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately that's where this thing kind of originated. So it's tough. These are tough conversations to have, but they're needed and they're important when you look at what's going on in the world right now. Everything's very broken, and I think it's going to take, particularly people of faith and Christians, coming together.
Amen.
And trying to do what's right.
Yep. Amen.
So, sticking with the theme of halls here, and the theme of culture as well. Your theme for the hall is worldwide travel, which obviously with the pandemic has gotten a lot more difficult to do.
Right.
But tell me why you chose that theme for your hall this year.
Yeah, for sure. Love that question, and I've done a lot of reevaluation after midterms. Just assessing how well I am doing as an RA, and just being honest about that self-assessment from this first half. And so, reevaluating my theme, I think coming into this semester over quarantine, I thought a lot about what it means to be a sojourner, and how I define that, and really being informed biblically in my definition of this. Sojourner to me is someone who dwells temporarily in a place that isn't necessarily their own. And that doesn't mean that they can't make it their own, but that is not their place of origin. And again, being that it is a sojourn, it is something that is temporary. So something that you're not going to be in for long. And I think that's a part of who we are as Christians, and a part of our identity as Christ followers is that we, one, are in a world that we are not going to be in forever, and that it isn't our place of origin. And so to think that, this world's not my home, to quote, that song that, we sing in church, realizing that, we have a God in heaven, and that we have an opportunity to spend an eternity with our Father in heaven. And so that being one side of being a sojourner, but also realizing that in our sojourn here, that we are even going to be called to different places temporarily, and that we will be taking different sojourns, and that we'll go through different seasons that we'll be sojourning in this thing that we called life. And so for me, I already loved the idea of travel, and so I knew I wanted to combine our identity as sojourners with cultural diversity, and what it means to sort of live in a world that has so much diversity, and yet still be unified within that diversity, and unified in Christ primarily. And so, yeah, I think the whole idea was that we would come into Gordon, wherever we were at, but bringing with us different experiences, different backgrounds, different things that we have gone through, and just different personalities, and yet still have this call to create community and to live in community with one another. And so how do you do that effectively? I think that was definitely on my mind. And so, yeah, I think I just wanted all of us to come in and see that, we're going to be here for a limited amount of time as college students. But, that doesn't mean that it can't be valuable. And so making our temporary time at Gordon as valuable as it can be. And that starts with recognizing, your own identity in Christ, and recognizing that others also have an identity in Christ, and that it can look differently for each of us. You don't have to look exactly the same, but we all serve the same God. And so that was a beautiful thing for me, and something that I wanted to really hark on in this semester, and even in this year. Yeah.
I want to kind of circle back. I know you mentioned very briefly when you're talking about your football career, being in Texas, being a Cowboys fan. It's ironic. Second show of the day, second Cowboys fan I've had on the program.
Wow.
Because Zach's a Cowboys fan as well. But first of all, I'm from northern Delaware, so it is all Eagles country.
Right.
Midnight Green up where I'm from, or I guess down from here up where you're from Texas. But I have total sympathy for Dak Prescott right now.
Yeah.
I hate seeing him go through that, and I know Carson had to go through the ACL injury a few years ago, but looking past that, even before Dak went down with the injury, I don't know how closely you've been following this year, but I mean the division is just so bad. Like,
yeah.
Have you gotten a chance to watch many games this season?
Yeah, I'll actually be honest with you. I actually, while I love the game of football and while I'm no longer playing, I actually never got into watching football that much. And if I did decide to play football, I actually love college more. And here's why, because I know that there's going to be a lot of haters in the world. The thing with the NFL, and I was taught this by my O-line coach, shout out to Coach Reed Deal, is that in college, they're still fighting for something. There's still the next level that they're trying to get to, if that's within, their plans. In the NFL, obviously, you need to maintain, that in order to stay at that level. But you've sort of already arrived. And so because of that, there's just, I feel like there's more fight at the college level. And so that sort of draws me in more because just the game itself is played in a very different way. Obviously, the NFL being the top level, but there's just something different about college ball.
My high school basketball coach told me the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's why he prefers college over the pros. You watch the majority of those guys out there are going to go into careers other than professional sports. And so, you have your superstars, obviously, and your one and dones in basketball in particular. But then you've got the seniors who are coming off the bench and are key role players who are just playing with heart and knowing that this is it for them. And, it does give them something to fight for. And then you have the guys who are considered maybe late second rounders or NFL guys maybe going later in the draft at best. And they need to prove that they're worthy of being at the next level. So there's a lot to fight for and a lot to look at in the college level, whereas the pros, obviously it's the best of the best, and you ideally should get a high quality entertainment product.
Yes.
But as you said, they've already made it.
Definitely. And I will say that even in this season, I think it's been pretty hard just because of the busyness of my schedule, which I hate being busy. I want to be more productive than I am busy because there's a distinction there. But nonetheless, love sports. I miss sports. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the just the connections and the relationships that you build with your teammates because, there's a shared experience there. You literally sweat, sometimes bleed together, and sometimes even cry together. And so that's, I think, what I love. And again, just so many different lessons that I've learned from my time as a football player and as a thrower on my track and field team. And so even though I love sports, to be completely honest, I think I definitely never got into watching a lot of sports. But I do have a respect for college game, whatever sport that would be.
Yeah, forgive me if you mentioned, but if you had a college team that's your favorite, would it be the Texas Longhorns, or is it another team in the Texas area?
Honestly, no. And I don't think I have a favorite college team. I will say though that when it comes to a game that I'm watching, I root for the winners. I'm one of those.
So you're a bandwagoner.
With this particular area, yes. But not in life. I'm not a bandwagoner. Yeah. But yeah, I think I just appreciate the game and the lessons that you learn from the game and just the brotherhood that's formed. And so that to me is really the value of something like football. So while I do find it entertaining at times, it isn't necessarily a form of entertainment that I immediately go to. Yeah.
So it's more of a you'll watch it if it's on, but not something that you follow intensely.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'd rather follow it if I am doing it. That's sort of what I
totally understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you're very busy. But what other hobbies do you have? What kind of entertainment do you enjoy when you get the opportunity?
Yeah, for sure. I've learned a lot about rest and what resting looks like, and for me, what I want rest to look like. And so I actually, I just love quality time with quality people. I prefer to have, quality food there as well because I love food. But yeah, I just love quality conversation, and I love spending time with people and making those connections and doing things that, that I love. And that can include anywhere from, eating good food to, I love film. I love, good movies and particularly acting. I acted in high school, and so I love just watching, beautiful masterpieces put together on film in front of me. So that and playing board games, I just love that sort of thing. But on the flip side, I also love the outdoors. I love walking. I love that we have on this campus woods that I get to go on and trails that I get to explore.
Amen.
Yeah, I love hiking. I love going to the beach. And the thing about the beach, though, is that I can go and just, I've talked about this before, but I can just sit there and just listen to the waves. I think there's something beautiful about just being able to go to the beach and not necessarily have to, go in the water, or not necessarily having to, play spike ball or whatever it is that your, beach activity would be. I just love going and just being in the presence of something as powerful as the ocean. And as a Pacific Islander, I recognize the beauty of the waters, and just being able to sit in that, and just sit and just relish that experience. So I love the ocean. I love walking on the beach, and I used to love reading until college. There's a lot of assigned reading there.
Yeah. A lot of reading you have to do anyway. It makes it difficult to get.
Exactly.
I can't tell you how many books I brought to college thinking, I'll have time to do some reading for fun, and I maybe get 3 chapters in all semester because it's so difficult to keep up with the stuff I have to read.
Literally. Yes, definitely. So that's been hard in this season. But I think other than that, again, I think my number one thing is singing. I love singing with people. I love harmony. I think there's just something about, hearing voices blend together, especially in worship. I just love what that sounds like, and being able to, I love all the instruments, but, the instrument of your voice, I think there's just something beautifully that you can, come and that it comes from, that you're making that sound. It's something really beautiful when you're able to congregate with other people and make beautiful music. But yeah, those are sort of my hobbies. It's hard sometimes because I have a lot of different hobbies. But back in high school, I used to just be that person, concisely saying, "Oh yeah, my hobbies are track and field and football." But yeah, really, I've been afforded the chance to really explore different hobbies that I've always had, but I've really been able to go into during my time here at Gordon. So those are just a few of the things that I love to do.
I know you mentioned track and field, and obviously you have a lot going on, but of course Gordon doesn't have a football team. We do have a track and field team, and I know because I'm on it.
Right.
I don't mean to recruit on the air here, but have you ever thought about coming out and at least seeing what our program does?
Actually, I have, and you are not the first person to try and recruit me. I actually love the track and field team here, even though I've never, been a part of it. It does play a role on this campus, and it has huge. It's just known on this campus, and I love the culture of it. I love the people that I know are a part of the team. So I know it's a quality team with a quality coach like Coach Weichert, and so even been recruited in the middle of lane, grabbing some food, and Coach Weichert comes up to me and says, "Oh, so
Weichert himself."
Yes.
Yeah.
So
he's a very good persuader.
He really is, and I almost said yes if I wasn't so busy.
That's totally understandable.
Yeah,
it is a little bit of a commitment
for sure. Yeah, and I commend y'all for that because I know it's a lot of work, and I can't imagine what it looks like at the college level. So, just super proud of all the people that I know, and just of the team itself. And while I would love to I don't know if that's in the cards for my time here at Gordon, and that really does pain me to say because I would love to be a part of it again, of that world, the track and field world. Just it excites me, and especially knowing what I know about the team that we have here at Gordon, it does pain me to say that I don't think I see myself doing that at all over my 4 years here. But not to get too excited, but my sister, she's actually a track and field star herself, and so she was thinking of coming to Gordon, but we'll see where the Lord leads.
Sure.
But yeah.
But you wouldn't totally close the door on it?
Okay, Ben.
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned twice that God has shattered the
right. Okay. Well,
never know what he's got planned.
Exactly. And you know what? Sure. The door is not completely closed to doing track and field here at Gordon College.
No, I wasn't going to do track. Actually.
Wow.
I only had really a cross country team in high school because I went to a very small high school.
Yeah.
But I remember Coach sat me down. I can't even remember. I guess it was probably September, my freshman year. Because he likes to develop athletes on a 4-year plan.
Yeah.
Individually, which I think is great. But he was just talking to me about how I was feeling, being a freshman on campus and how my training was going. And we went back and forth a little bit, and he told me, I think these were his exact words. He said, and then when we get into track season, and I was at this point still the mindset that,
yeah.
I did track for 1 year, my sophomore year, and, I did 3 meets, so I knew virtually nothing about the differences between that and cross country. I mean, I watched track and field in the Olympics and everything and on TV, but I told him, I'm not sure if I'm going to do track, and he pressed me on it and said, why not? And I told him my situation, and he asked that I keep the door open and consider it. And then I remember, 2 weeks to go in the season, we were doing interval work up on the track, and felt that I was in the best shape of my life. Really just had a great workout, and I felt the spirit come over me while I was in the workout, and
love
that was my message. Because I was concerned too, much like you're saying about just the time was the main thing for me. I wasn't working in the mailroom at this point. I didn't have an on-campus job. I was still a freshman trying to find my footing. So I just kind of gave it all to God and said, look, I don't know how you're going to make it work. But I know this is what you want me to do, and I'm glad I did. It's the best decision I ever made here.
That's awesome, Ben. I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, what events did you do? I mean, obviously you said you were a thrower, but there's a lot of different throwing events. It's a very diverse sport. So
definitely.
What was your specialty?
So I was shot and disc, and shot was my better event. Absolutely loved it. Couldn't really get the form down for disc, but I knew shot. I just loved it. And I loved obviously you compete, but the thing I loved about the track and field world is that, you could have a grand time with your competitors. And then when you get into the ring, it's business. And so, shot was my better event until senior year. Because I did track and field all 4 years of high school. Loved it. My mom did track and field, and so my sister and I, it was just natural that we would take that on as well. And so, senior year hit, and I found myself at a place where I had nearly perfected discus form. Obviously, not as near as I thought, because discus form, but really good place, and ended up breaking the school record for disc, and it was just a fun experience. So shot put and discus were my events, and had a lot of fun there.
Well, man, this has been a lot of fun
for sure.
I really appreciate this is the longest I think we've ever gone.
Wow.
For a show. This is the 26th show that I've done.
Wow.
And like you said, you're a great storyteller. Really appreciate you coming on tonight, taking the time out of your evening.
Thank you, Ben.
And I can just say, I can tell you firsthand from Shane as well. We're seniors here, and we both agree you're the best RA we've ever had. With no disrespect to the RAs that we've had that came before us. We both think you've done a wonderful job so far this semester. I know you're going to continue to grow yourself and continue to serve this community well. So thank you again for everything that you do, and look forward to seeing what God has in your plans for the future.
Of course. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, you're awesome. It's easy to serve when it's people like you. So grateful for this opportunity and grateful for you and what I've learned from you so far in this season. So you're awesome.
All right. Thank you very much, man.